Shalom, shalom, and welcome, my brothers, my sisters, my family. If you are one who seeks to do the will of the Almighty Father, I consider you my family. Welcome to Final Exodus Readiness, an end-time ruling series. My name is Symmanayah, and this is the fourth installment of Final Exodus Readiness. It is focused on the feast times. The feast times, also known as set-apart times. My brothers and sisters, while there is much controversy on these, I want to bring to your attention that I believe that there is a purpose for each of the 7 feast times that they are commonly known. I believe without a doubt that the Spirit of Yahusha has revealed to me that each of these feast times has a purpose beyond just eating and coming together. It has a major significance that could be somewhat of a checklist or a backbone to discerning those who are being awakened by his set-apart spirit, those who are being prepared for the final Exodus. And I am referencing the feasts, the common names of the feasts: Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, harvest, trumpets, atonement, and tabernacle. After careful studying and praying, I believe the Spirit of Yahushua gave me something more regarding the purposes of these 7 feasts, and I will share them with you in this recording. I believe he presented that the purpose within these 7 feasts is a purpose that is akin to a blueprint towards maturity and unity and set-apartness. This blueprint is something that can be passed down from generation to generation without regards to whether or not we are in captivity. While many people have become divided on whether or not we can honor the feast times while in captivity, or how do we determine the correct times of the year for the feast times, if we look at their purpose, if we look at it as a blueprint towards maturity, as a strengthening factor for Yashar'al, one could discover a higher priority other than coming together and eating. I present to you that each of these feasts have purpose. In short, Passover, a purpose that can be seen in this, that it is a time of obedience. It's a time for identifying set-apart instructions. It is a time of preparation. For in Passover, if we did not obey, if we did not prepare and follow the instructions of the Most High, it will lead and could lead to death. We see those who acknowledge that Yahusha is the ultimate Passover and embrace and seek to do the will of the Almighty Father through him as he guides us and directs us. We find ourselves restored into fellowship with the Almighty Father. The Feast of the Unleavened Bread is a time of discerning between righteousness, set-apartness, and wickedness. It is a time of judgment. It is a time for individual, discreet, and wise choices, decisions being made. It is a time we will also find leadership, for there will be people that will cling on to others who are growing in discerning the difference between right or wrong, discerning the different influences that are out there. First fruits. Bringing to mind that no matter where we go and how we grow, we must always keep our minds on our first love and establish priorities. We must also come to realize that some people will be quicker than others to receive certain instructions and set-apartness. Harvest time, a time of maturity, a time when more numbers are ready and right. Trumpets, a time of sound teaching, a time of unity, a time to sound the shofar, to sound and echo the sentiments of set-apartness as a unified awakening nation. Atonement, knowing that in our mistakes and our falls and stumble, The power of atonement brings restoration and regeneration. It brings renewal, tabernacle, identity. Who is the person in the mirror? Do we not know that our bodies are temples of the Almighty One, and collectively the assembly of Yahuah is indeed the house of Yahuah? Make no mistake, my brothers and sisters, these 7 feast times have purpose and meaning beyond what's commonly known and spoken amongst the groups and camps and fellowships. Shabbat, as well as the new moons, are also significant parts in our journey. However, I wanted to bring your attention to these 7 feast times. I realize there may be some of you who are unaware of the feast times, so I am referencing what is written in Leviticus 23rd chapter. Leviticus 23rd chapter is what I am referencing. Take a moment and become familiar with that chapter if you're not already. For the sake of time in this recording, I strongly suggest that if you are unaware of these set apart times, take a moment, read Leviticus 23 before continuing listening to the rest of this message. The feast times are one of the most controversial subjects among individuals waking up to the truth. There are many positions of belief, as well as teachings, doctrines on their meanings and purpose. As you can imagine, what I'm about to present, this too adds to the fray of things to pray and seek to discern whether they indeed have life or not. I invite you to seek the power and knowledge from the Spirit of Yahusha regarding these words. I do want to read specifically Leviticus 23, 14, and 21, and 23, 31, and 41. It reads as follows: "And you do not eat bread or roasted grain or fresh grain until the same day that you have brought an offering to your Almighty One, a law forever through your generations in all your dwellings." 21, "And on this day you shall proclaim a set-apart gathering for yourselves. You do no servile work on it, a law forever in all your dwellings throughout your generations." That was Leviticus 23, 14, and then Leviticus 23, 21. Leviticus 23, 31, "You do not work, a law forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings." That was Leviticus 23, 31. Leviticus 23, 41, "And you shall observe it as a festival to Yahuah for 7 days in the year, a law forever in your generations. Observe it in the 7th month." There is no doubt in my mind that there were many instructions given in Leviticus 23 regarding the various feast times. And I want you to know one thing we can do as a law forever is come to discern their purpose and be strong and never stray away from knowing how Passover brings life and restoration. And unleavened bread, it brings the ability to discern the difference between set apart influence and wicked influence. First fruits, knowing that some people will get some things quicker than others. Harvest time, knowing that in patience it's a time of maturity and the numbers will grow among the set-apart children. My brothers and sisters, consider these words. There is no doubt that these feast times have purpose. I want to direct your attention to Amos chapter 5, verse 18 through 27, and I've posted these verses that I am quoting on the slides as I go through them. I will actually read this passage, Amos 5th chapter, verse 18 through 27. It reads as follows: "Woe to you who are longing for the day of Yahuah. What does the day of Yahuah mean to you? It is darkness and not light, as when a man flees from a lion and a bear shall meet him, or entered his house and rested his hand on the wall and a serpent shall bite him. Is not the day of Yahuah darkness and not light? Is it not very dark with no brightness in it? I have hated, I have despised your festivals, and I am not pleased with your assemblies." I want to pause for a minute. Notice here, the prophet Amos is speaking as Yahuah is directing him. And he said he have hated and despised the festivals and have no pleasure with the assemblies. Here we see something went wrong. Somewhere a man went wrong. Somewhere there was an error as regards to the feast days. Some of these set-apart times were substituted with pagan holidays. Some of these feast times, many lost sight of their purpose. I want to continue on. Amos 5:22 say, though you offer me burnt offerings and your grain offerings, I do not accept them, nor do I look on your fattened peace offerings. Take away from me the noise of your songs, for I do not hear the sound of your stringed instruments. And let right rulings roll on like water in righteousness, like a mighty stream. You brought me slaughterings and meal offerings in the wilderness for 40 years, O house of Yashar'al. But you took up Sukkot, your sovereign, and Kiyum, your idols, your Yisrael mighty ones, which you made for yourselves. You see here, my brothers and sisters, somewhere focus was lost. And I submit to you, in these end times, focus is lost as regards to the feast times. But we will be restored into what is indeed important. He goes on to say here, therefore I shall send you into exile beyond Damascus, said Yahuah, the Almighty One of hosts, his name. And I also want to read to you Amos 8, 9, and 10. It reads as follows, and it shall be in that day, declares Master Yahuah, that I shall cause the sun to go down at noon, and shall darken the earth on a day of brightness, and shall turn your festivals into mourning, and all your songs into lamentation, and bring your sackcloths on all loins, and baldness on every head, and shall make it like mourning for an only son, and its end like a day of bitterness. My brothers and sisters, many instructions we have received, and all too often sometimes we lose track, or we lose focus, or we fail to discern the purpose of such instructions, how they can contribute to our maturity, our unity as an awakening nation. Many people have strayed from what the Almighty Father have ordered. Many have taken on practices to more so demonstrate vanity, fashion, and flair. I submit to you, O Yashar'al, the time is at hand for us to wake up and realize the need to discern what the Father is telling us through his set-apart spirit. Consider John 4:24, which says, the Almighty One is spirit, and those who worship him need to worship him in spirit and in truth. So I ask you again, could there be something more than just coming together and eating food and hanging out? Could there be something dealing with our spirit, dealing with truth as it relates to the feast times? John 16:13 say, but when he comes, the Spirit of truth, he shall guide you into all truth, for he shall not speak from himself, but whatever he hears, he shall speak, and he shall announce to you what is to come. Romans 8:14 says, for as many as led by the Spirit of the Almighty One, these are the sons of the Almighty One. I bring these verses up for many reasons, my brothers and sisters. For many reasons. Reasons such as the importance of knowing that we have a spirit within us. And within that spirit, within that inward man, it must be fed. It must be nourished. And I submit to you, in the words of the instructions of the feast times, there are some spiritual purposes. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 12 through 14 reads as follows. And we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit that is from the Almighty One, in order to know what the Almighty One has favorably given us, which we also speak, not in words which man's wisdom teaches, but which the set-apart Spirit teaches, comparing spiritual matters with spiritual matters. Again, could there be more to the feast times concerning spiritual matters? It goes on to say, and I read in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 12 through 14. Verse 14 now, but the natural man does not receive the matters of the Spirit of the Almighty One, for they are foolishness to him. And he is unable to know them because they are spiritually discerned. So again, I say to you, my brothers and sisters, before you reject these words of the purposes regarding the feast times, ask yourself, could these words present something that is spiritual, something that requires discernment? Moving right along, Galatians chapter 5, verses 16 and 17 says, "And I say, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not accomplish the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are opposed to each other, so that you do not do what you desire to do." Dropping down to verse 25. That was the 5th chapter of Galatians, verses 16 and 17. I'm dropping to verse 25. "If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit." Walk in the Spirit, my brothers and sisters. For there is much to learn that is significant and important to our final Exodus, to the contribution of being prepared. Final Exodus Readiness will prove to be a growing list that will contribute to our preparation. John, the third John, chapter 1, verse 4. I want to share that one with you as well. It says, "I have no greater joy than to hear my children walking in truth." With that said, hear, O Yashar'al, and discern how it is indeed important to discern the set apart instructions the Almighty Father provides. It would be wise to embrace that the purpose of all these 7 feasts has greater priority than just coming together and eating. I cannot stress that enough. It would be wise to come to grips of how the purpose of these 7 feast times can be as a blueprint towards maturity and unity. It can be a checklist. If we come across another, a brother, a sister, if we come across a camp of fellowship, let us inquire, what are their positions regarding the 7 feast times? Regarding Passover, as I mentioned, obedience, preparation, instruction that led to life. If we looked at the 2 specific Passovers, it would not be difficult to realize, my brothers and sisters, that there was set apart instructions given, and as a result, life was sustained, life emerged. If we look at Yahusha as our ultimate sacrificial lamb of Yahuah, we'll see it is through him that we receive life, and life immeasurably. I submit to you, my brothers, let us never forget our first love. Let us never forget where life originates. And I submit that it originates from the Passover lamb of Yahuah, Yahusha. Now consider this. Do you think the Most High Father would restore us into fellowship with him? Do you think that he would just give us life and that's it? And not instruct us on how to grow into maturity? It would be wise to realize that once we are awakened as a result of being drawn by him, the next step would be to begin the process of growing. And how can we grow unless we're able to discern the difference between right or wrong? Set apartness versus wickedness. Look closely, my family, and we will be able to see the next feast, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, serves as a reminder of the importance of discerning influences. Be advised, leavening is another word for the same function that describes an influence or influencing an influence. If we can agree that Passover brings instructions and requires obedience and lead to life, let us embrace the question of now what after Passover. And that now what is, let us begin to study and pray and grow and set apartness so that we know that it is important for us to be able to discern the difference between right or wrong. And I submit to you, the Feast of Unleavened Bread emphasizes that if we're able to discern its purpose. Let me begin by saying it would be wise to realize that this next feast, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, as I stated, if we were to pass that on to generation and let our brothers and sisters and our young ones know that in this quest, in this growth, in this pursuit of obeying his 10 commandments, his laws and statutes, in this pursuit of growing strong in the spirit, we must be able to grow to discern the difference between right and wrong, what is righteous and what is not. You see this blueprint come together? Passover, life, unleavened bread, growing in this life, discerning between right and wrong. And now first fruits, first love, priorities, structure, and order. For if we look at the third feast, Yashar'al, it would not be difficult to discern the realities that there are those among us who will indeed discern things, coming to some truth regarding being enlightened from various passages of scriptures before others. There will be those that will be awakened and drawn out of captivity and freed from strongholds, some quicker than others. Have we ever witnessed or been a participant of receiving something so massively large, so truthful, so set apart that in our excitement we wanted others to experience that joy? We wanted others to look up and be free just as we were as a result of awakening from things that held us down or back, from things that distracted us from pursuing the will of the Almighty Father. Look around. If one was to examine those around them, we would not be hard pressed to identify as individuals who become so excited, overly anxious, and exhibit various stages of overreacting, or some will even experience emotions, wondering why are there individuals that do not get the truth so readily? Why are others not seeing what they're seeing? Sure, my brothers and sisters, some of us will be enlightened before others. Different individuals learn at different pace. I believe the Feast of First Fruits contributes towards our development in establishing priorities, structure, and patience and set apartness, knowing that in due season others will join in receiving the things that we receive as relates to the building up of Yashar'al. My brothers and sisters, let us embrace this purpose, and when we witness the overzealous brother or sister get upset because no one, or they believe not everyone, can receive the words of truth that they may present, let us pray for them. Let us mention first fruits is just as it is in agriculture. Our first fruits, when they ripen, they are picked. They're not left on the branch or the tree or the vine to rotten. They're picked and they're used. They're put to use. So it is with us, for those who receive the truth. If we lean on the Spirit of the Most High to direct us, and out of patience, we will see He will use us. And out of patience, we will see that harvest time will come. I submit to you, my brothers and sisters, if we're able to discern with patience how some receive things quicker than others, in due season, in due time, we will begin to see our numbers enlarge. We will begin to see, as the numbers enlarge, we move on to the next feast, the Feast of Harvest. I submit to you, the Feast of Harvest has a purpose. It is to let us know it is a time of maturity. It is to let us know that we will grow in numbers. It is to let us know, just as a farmer sees massive numbers of his crop ripen and ready to be harvested, ready to be picked, so will we see a time for Yashar'al, where we will be right, mature, and strong in unity and set apartness. How many of us could judge or describe what would be most valuable to Yashar'al? To send someone, a toddler, into battle before that toddler is trained? Will we ask and expect people to take on positions before they are equipped to face the responsibilities that come with that position? I submit to you, my brothers and sisters, when there is maturity, our numbers are enlarged exponentially. In other words, nation builder can occur more rapidly with minimum flaws. Now remember, the flesh war against the spirit, therefore we will face mistakes. But if we were to look at the harvest, if we were to look at harvest time, this feast time, this purpose, is as if it is telling us to know that our numbers will grow, to trust the words of the Most High, to know that as our numbers grow, we will become more visible to the world. How many people have ever considered that if we were to understand the blueprint, the purpose of the feast time, we just may be less dysfunctional than we are right now. In other words, if we demonstrated the patience and grow with maturity, if we never lose sight of how we receive life from the Passover, never lose sight how in unleavened bread it's important to discern between right and wrong, never lose sight that some will get it before others, never lose sight that we will come together in mass numbers, harvest time will come. And we will see as we grow in numbers, my brothers and sisters, there will be a level of comfort. And in that comfort, we will see unity grow among an awakening nation. There are some among us who choose fellowships based on numbers, based on the number of people, based on the size of that group or camp, based off of the appearance of being together in unity. Beware, my brothers and sisters. Beware of the misconceptions and the false demonstrations that bring about distractions and set apartness. Seek ye first the Almighty One and his righteousness, and all things will be added, including witnessing an awakening nation come together in maturity, in unity, in love, and life. Be careful, my brothers and sisters, for not every group that appear to be unified is indeed unified and led by the chosen one of the Almighty Father. Always pray without ceasing, ever so seeking to discern the difference of what's before us. When or if we find ourselves within a set-apart fellowship or camp, let us rejoice and be glad if we indeed see the workings of the Almighty Father within such. For truly larger numbers moving about in unity is far better than moving about as a silo, as one, individual, all alone. Many of us have rushed to get into groups of fellowships, but it's time to assess where we are. Is it time to come away? Is it time to be intertwined, more knitly joined together with that group, or is it time to flee? Each of us have an obligation to fully understand Passover, unleavened bread, and first fruits before we can most effectively work within a mass group in unity, reflecting a harvest. Yashar'al, I'm compelled to believe that we will be in small groups, and they will merge into larger groups and much larger groups until ultimately a final group will emerge, an awakening nation. The final Exodus will take shape, and we will see a harvest like the world has never imagined, as an awakening nation come together in unity. And in such days, excitement will be among us with a joy and many together singing, hallelujah, hallelujah, knowing our redemption is drawing even closer. We will come to echo the sounds like a rushing wind. We will be akin to a mighty noise or a beautiful choir shouting out. We will be akin to those blowing the shofar, echoing the sounds of set apartness in the rise of an awakening nation. And thus we will see it reflects the next feast, the Feast of Trumpets. I submit to you, my brothers and sisters, the Feast of Trumpets, its purpose. Echo the sounds of unity, echo the sounds of set apartness as a unified awakening nation. Let us prepare to witness the promises of the Most High fulfilled. Revelations 15:2 and 15:3, I want to read that. It says, and I saw like a sea of glass mixed with fire, and those overcoming the beast and its image and its mark and the number of his name, standing on the sea of glass, holding harps of the Almighty One, and they sing the song of Moshe, the servant of the Almighty One, and the song of the Lamb, saying, great and marvelous are your works, Yahuah, Almighty One. Righteous and true are your ways, O sovereign of the set-apart ones. Sovereign is another way of saying kings, my brothers and sisters. Now envision this. Envision the beauty and Yashar'al coming together. Envision how beautiful it would be, my brothers and sisters, to witness such a turn of events. How many of us are familiar with Psalms 133? Psalms 133. It's only 3 verses. Let me read them briefly. They read as follows: See how good and how pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity, like the precious oil on the head, running down on the beard of Aharon, running down on the collar of his robes. It's like the dew of Hermon that comes down on the mountains of Zion. For there Yahuah commanded the blessings, life forever. My brothers and sisters, as we find ourselves awakening, as we find ourselves growing in maturity, as we find ourselves serving the Most High in spirit and in truth, we will witness unity beginning to unfold like never before imagined. It would be wise to realize that in our excitement, we will stumble, we'll fall, even in numbers. There'll be times we'll stumble. And thus we move to the next feast, the Feast of Atonement. It is and will always be a good symbol that can be passed from generation to generation to know that in atonement, through the shed blood of the Lamb, we find renewal, restoration, regeneration. I submit to you, the Feast of Atonement gives us the strength. It gives us the audacity to rise up and be as if we are a new person and press forward in our calling. Let's take a look at this feast as it relates to purpose. The Feast of Atonement, my brothers and sisters, it is the 6th out of the 7 feasts. Notice how it follows when we started echoing the sounds of unity, the sounds of set-apartness. Notice how, if we look around in our excitement, we wouldn't be hard-pressed to discover people that have stumbled and fallen. And we ourselves look in the mirror from time to time and know we stumble and fall. But it is through atonement that we have the strength, the audacity, the belief, the love, the fortitude to rise up. I want to read Matthew 26:28. It reads, For this is my blood, that of the renewed covenant, which is shed for many for the forgiveness of sins. It is through the shed blood of Yahusha Mashiach that we find forgiveness, that we find the active power of atonement. My brothers and sisters, let us discern the truth. The truth is that through the blood of the Lamb of Yahuah, through the blood of the Lamb of Yahuah, Yahusha, we have forgiveness. It is this that allows us to get up each day. It is this that allows us to dust off our pants and rise up from the ground and step away from self-pity or self-condemnation, repent and rise up and receive the newness of spirit and mind. For not only do atonement bring forgiveness of sin, it makes way for the set-apart spirit to nurture our inward man, that we may grow. Let me read 2 Corinthians 4:16. It reads, Therefore we do not lose heart, but even if our outward man is perishing, the inward man is being renewed day by day. Day by day, my brothers and sisters. 2 Corinthians 5:17 reads, Therefore if anyone is in Messiah, he is a renewed creature. He is a renewed creature. The old matters have passed away. See, all matters have become renewed. How many of us can receive these words? That in this feast time, the feast time of atonement, there's renewal, there's restoration, there is forgiveness, there is love. Ephesians 4:20 through 24 reads as follows, But you have not so learned Messiah, if indeed you have heard him and were taught by him, as truth is in Yahusha, that you put off with regard to your former way of life, the old man being corrupted according to the desires of deceit, and to be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and that you put on the renewed man, which was created according to the Almighty One, in righteousness and set-apartness of the truth. You see, my brothers and sisters, there's a renewal that takes place. There's something phenomenal that occurs from recognizing the power of atonement, for identifying the presence of his living set-apart spirit. Let me also read Ephesians 5:18 through 21. It reads as follows: Do not be drunk with wine, in which is loose behavior, but be filled with the Spirit, speaking to each other in psalms and songs of praise, and spiritual songs, and singing, and striking the strings in your heart to the Master, giving thanks always for all to the Almighty One, the Father, in the name of our Master Yahusha Messiah, subjecting yourselves to each other in the fear of the Almighty One. My brothers and sisters, subjecting ourselves to him, leaning to his set-apart spirit, knowing the power of atonement is a wonderful thing. It helps us to move forward, to press on, to have the audacity to hunger and desire to worship and obey, even in the midst of when we stumble and when we fall. Rise up, O Yashar'al, we are being refined. The Feast of Atonement is something that will echo in the coming days. It would be as though the Spirit of Yahusha is lifting us up when we stumble, when we fall, as we press forward, O Yashar'al. Now that this is occurring, we begin to recognize our individual identity like never before. We begin to recognize the identity of an awakening nation, the identity of an assembly, the identity of Yahuah's house. Thus, the seventh feast, the Feast of Tabernacle, is brought forth, my brothers and sisters. The Feast of Tabernacle, although we know this feast is to remember when Yahuah delivered Yashar'al out of Mitzrayim or Egypt, as is written in Leviticus 23rd chapter, verses 42 to 34, and I'll read them. It reads as follows: Dwell in booths for 7 days, all who are native Israelites dwell in booths, so that your generations know that I made the children of Yashar'al dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim. Some versions will say Egypt. I am Yahuah, your Almighty One. Thus did Moshe speak of the appointed times of Yahuah to the children of Yashar'al. I submit to you, my brothers. I submit to you, my sisters, my family. We can learn from these feast times. We can learn as we strengthen our knowledge on our true identity. We can learn that there is indeed, as a house, as a tabernacle of Yahuah, it's a focal point. It's a focal point where it begins with us and set apart deliverance and set apart actions. We come to know that our bodies are shelters, our vessels of the Almighty Father, our vessels of our spirit, our vessels of our inward man. We can also see that together as an assembly, as an assembly of set apart ones in Yahuah, we are his tabernacle, my brothers and sisters. Let me move on and read Acts 17:24. It reads, Yahuah, who made the world and all that is in it, this one being master of heaven and earth, he does not dwell in dwellings made with hands. You see, even though we may assemble in a shelter, even though we may assemble in a tent, the truth of the matter, his spirit is within us and in us, working through us one towards another. Romans 8:9 say, but you are not in the flesh, but in the spirit, if indeed the Spirit of the Almighty One dwells in you. And if anyone does not have the Spirit of Messiah, this one is not his. Plain and simple, my brothers and sisters. I want to go on and read 1 Corinthians 3:16. It reads, do you not know that you are a dwelling place of the Almighty One, and that the Spirit of the Almighty One dwells in you? 2 Corinthians 6, that was 1 Corinthians 3:16. And I have these posted, my brothers and sisters, on the screen. 2 Corinthians 6:16 reads, and what union has the dwelling places of the Almighty One with idols? For you are a dwelling place of the living Almighty One. As the Almighty One has said, I shall dwell in them and walk among them, and I shall be their Almighty One, and they shall be my people. My brothers and sisters, I've mentioned often Hebrews 12th chapter. I don't have that one up there, but Hebrews 12th chapter, it speaks of being refined, disciplined, chastened. We who are the children of the Almighty One. And I submit to you, my brothers and sisters, in that refining process, as we enter into the days of preparation for the final Exodus, we will see that judgment will start with the leaders first, and then the congregants, then the groups and fellowships. It will start amongst the outspoken first, and it will reach each of us. Who is aware of 1 Peter 4:17? For it reads, because it is time for judgment to begin from the house of the Almighty One, and if firstly from us, what is the end of those who do not obey the good news of the Almighty One? I submit to you, my brothers and sisters, individually and collectively as the children of Yahuah, we are the house of Yahuah. We are as his tabernacle. We are as his vessels. Again, we are the house of Yahuah. We are the family of set apartness. Let us be mindful. In summary, I encourage you to listen again to this message, for it's critical in building unity and maturity among the set apart ones of Yahuah. Remember, Passover, my brothers and sisters, it is a time where life came to be as a result of obedience, preparation, following instructions, embracing and receiving the living words from the Most High. Unleavened bread, discerning between right and wrong. Watching leadership demonstrate how to discern between right or wrong. Knowing when to purge wicked leavening from our midst, or when to come away from such. First fruits, knowing the importance of first loves and priorities, understanding that sometimes we will get it quicker than others. Some will get it quicker than us. But in due time, as we grow in numbers, we will see harvest, the feast of harvest, a time of maturity, a time when our numbers swell, a time when awakening nation come together. And as we enlarge in numbers, it will be as a trumpet, echoing sound teachings in unity. It would be as a melodious sound of a choir singing a song of unity. And then we see atonement and our excitement and our joy and our amazement. We'll stumble and fall, but we see that the Feast of Atonement, if we understand and can discern its purpose, we will see that it brings about strength. And as I said earlier, the audacity to rise up and be renewed in mind and spirit, according to the words of the Most High. In tabernacle, we will walk with certainty of our identity. We will walk with certainty of our individual identity, our identity as a body of set apart children of Yahuah, as an assembly of an awakening nation. Just imagine if we embrace the strength of this blueprint by keeping our perspective in order as I presented in this message. How much stronger, how much more polished will Yashar'al be? Believe it or not, there is so much more to get from these feast times, my brothers and sisters. So this isn't the only, but it is something that can build upon our strength. Prepare to receive what is expected in the coming days for the gathering of a set-apart nation. A nation under the banner of Yashar'al will come together. We will see 12 tribes, 12,000 of each of the 12 tribes. We will witness the 144,000 emerge and rise with all clarity according to Scripture. And we will see, once each of the 12 nations are represented, that we will all come under one banner. I submit to you that banner will indeed be Yashar'al. And all that you hear and amongst all that you see, my brothers and sisters, never forget 1 John 4:1, which says, Beloved ones, do not believe every spirit, but prove the spirits whether they are of the Almighty One, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. Judge these words that I present, my brothers and sisters. Seek to discern whether they indeed line up with the living words, with the living actions of set apartness coming from the Almighty Father, Yahuah, through his set apart spirit, sent in Yahusha's name. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, continue to be encouraged. I pray that you are in good health, growing in wisdom, and growing to understand the power of true discernment, which is when the Spirit of Yahusha reveal and make things known to us. Stay tuned. Stay tuned, for as I have breath, this growing playlist entitled Final Exodus Readiness will prove to be a vital resource and preparing for the assembling of a nation that is awakening, of a nation that will be brought together in unity. Stay tuned as I present more regarding our preparations as it relates to end time movement to come, my brothers and sisters. This has been the 4th installment of Final Exodus Readiness. It has been an installment designed to bring about truth and a spiritual awakening as to the purpose or something that could be even more strengthening, that can be taken from the first words of the scriptures describing feast times and set apart times. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, I know that I can be redundant. I know that it could appear as though I'm saying things over and over, or the bottom line, I am saying things over and over. But remember, when there are sirens and warnings and alarms, they go off. They play a vital role in our lives. When the shofar is sounded, it plays a vital role until it's no longer needed. So sometimes we will hear sounds echoing over and over again until they are no longer needed. Pray for me, O Yashar'al, that I may discern and obey all that is given to me, and that I know when to yield, when to stand strong, when to speak, when to be silenced, and that this holds true for each of us. Again, continue to be encouraged. Shalom. And as I would say in conclusion, I, as Symmanayah, will continue to be among those proclaiming the names Yahuah and Yahusha. I will proclaim these names as long as I have breath, my brothers and sisters, knowing the sequence that they were introduced, knowing the importance of recognizing and lifting up Yahusha. For in lifting up Yahushua HaMashiach, it is through our obedience to him that we lift him up, and we will witness him drawing us together in unity as a set apart and awakening nation. Take care, my brothers and sisters. Shalom, shalom, shalom.